Asbestos on money? On today's Asbestos Artifacts. Most of the objects we've talked about on Asbestos Artifacts have been from North America. We did another episode on the discovery of asbestos in Quebec, Canada in 1876, and the Thetford and Jeffrey mines, which were the source of most asbestos in America, and in fact much of the world. But before that, where did the world get its asbestos? The answer to that question is today's asbestos artifact, a 10 Emolongeni, which features the Havelock mine in Bulembu, Eswatini. The British colonial name for the area was Swaziland, for the Swazi people who settled there in the 17th century. They called their kingdom by its modern name, Eswatini. In the early 1800s, King Somlolo consolidated various conflicting clans and expanded the realm to include what we now call Mozambique. But in 1877, the British Empire annexed the Swazi territory, and by 1894, Swaziland became a protectorate of the British Transvaal colony following the Second Boer War. One of the unfortunate things to understand about Africa is that all of colonialism's worst behavior was often the most extreme in Africa, and the asbestos industry was no exception. The British manufacturing company Turner Newall was one of the first companies to industrialize asbestos, and they made everything from asbestos fabric to asbestos cement to spray-on fireproof asbestos insulation. After World War I, there was a rush of people buying products, and to keep up with demand, Turner Newall had to look for asbestos mines abroad, and that took it to the Southern Hemisphere. Turner Newall began buying up mines across southern Africa, but when they realized the largest deposits of the best asbestos laid at the village of Bulembu, they began buying up land and by 1929 had bought up the whole area. Then, the Wall Street crash of 1929 came. The world economy cratered, and it wasn't until 1939 that Turner and Newall could finally develop the Havelock mine, which contained the highly sought-after chrysotile white asbestos, which is curved and can be woven into fibers. It would soon become a major source of public revenue in Swaziland, and for some time it was the nation's largest single employer. And that's the thing to understand about the asbestos industry in Africa. The economies of most southern African countries were built by the mining industry, and the livelihoods of much of its population was dependent on the decisions and rules of the mine owners. They didn't have what economists call labor mobility, the ability to quit your job and go to the person across the street. Turner Newall was one of the only games in town, and not only in Eswatini. They owned most of the largest mines in neighboring Zimbabwe, which was called Rhodesia then, and they owned more than a few in neighboring South Africa as well. To say they've had a bad record in their operations of South African mines would be an understatement. Mistreatment of employees, employing kids off the books, contaminating the environment with asbestos waste, this is how they did business. At the Havelock mine, just like many other asbestos mines, the tiny fibers get into the air and even water systems, and numerous people in the area have developed asbestos-related cancers like lung cancer and mesothelioma, even though they never actually worked at the mine. When Swaziland was gaining independence from Britain in the 1960s, all the economic articles warned that the nation should choose leaders that understand just how dependent the country is on outside investment. Maybe that was a veiled threat, but in the long run, the country was so dependent on the mine, and it was such a big part of the national fabric, that in 1985 they put the asbestos mine on what amounts to Swaziland's $10 bill, the 10 Emolongeni. On the other side, the bill features King Sobhuza II. In 1899, at only 4 months old, Sobhuza's father died, making him king. His grandmother and uncle ran the country until 1921, when Sobhuza ascended the throne. He continued as a figurehead during British colonial rule, but fought to gain independence for Swaziland. When it did, he remained the acknowledged king until his death, giving Sobhuza II the longest continuous reign in recorded history, 82 years. Turner and Newall denied claims for years, but that was nothing new for them. Decades before, a weaver of asbestos textiles named Nellie Kershaw was denied the first asbestos workers' compensation claim, dying penniless after working for a predecessor of Turner and Newall known as the Turner Brothers Asbestos Company. Turner and Newall continued their business for decades, allowing employees and their families to become sick and contaminating the environment of everyone who lived around the mine. At the time this bill was issued, it would have been worth about 10 American cents. And it's now worth more than that actually, since they're no longer being issued. I have to wonder if many countries would put asbestos on their money today, but at the time, the mine had been a chief source of economic development for Swaziland. Certainly the country has a lot to be proud of. The mine itself is hard to reach, and it was an engineering feat involving an impressive cable track to port the mined crock elsewhere for milling. But in the mid-80s, when this currency was issued, the truth came out that asbestos causes cancer and other diseases. things the asbestos industry had known for many decades. The market for asbestos tanked, and all but 50 of the 10,000 people living around the mine fled, leaving it a ghost town. Not long ago, claims have been made that it's safe again, and the area is being used as an orphanage for children whose parents died from HIV. In some ways, it's hard to think of a clearer picture of the effects that the asbestos industry had on some of the places where it operated mines. That's especially true in Africa, which even at the time were described as sometimes deplorable at a level no one would accept at Turner Newall's mines in Britain. I get asked a lot, how could the asbestos industry convince themselves that it was okay to let employees die? I guess it's like colonialism. It's a combination of paternalism, ideology, bigotry, and justification. But in the end, it's often very much about this. Thanks for watching. Tune in to the next Asbestos Artifacts.